Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about 5 transits that I think are really shaping the 2024 US presidential election. I've been consuming a ton of political content lately, and I don't regret any of it, but I just thought it would be helpful for probably all of us, me in particular, to take a step back and look at the larger astrological energy as we think about how to navigate these times. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Lisa Merrifield. I'm from Trails Edge Astrology, and my purpose with this channel is to give grounded and practical advice to help you work with the cosmic tides so you can make good decisions. So I was watching a content creator that I really like. Her name's Maryanne. She's from Revealing Light, Tarot, Astrology, and Spirituality, and she does tarot readings on current events around the world. But lately she has been having a particular focus on the US presidential election. And the last one she did on August 18th got my blood pressure up a little bit. It made me a little bit concerned that maybe things aren't well, we knew things were going to be difficult and, might not go the way I wanted. And so, as I said at the beginning, I decided that it's important to take a step back and look at the bigger picture sometimes. So that's what we're going to do today. Um, if you like what's here, I would really appreciate it if you give me a like. If you're willing to subscribe to the channel, if you're interested in hearing more of my content, that would be fantastic. I'm trying to get my message out, share my thoughts and opinions with others, and I appreciate any help you're willing to give me in doing that. So, with that out of the way, let's talk about the 5 transits that I think are really impacting what we're doing right now. So, the first one I want to talk about is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction and then all of the subsequent transits that have come from that. So, back in April, Jupiter and Uranus came together in Taurus, and Jupiter and Uranus meet every 14 years in a sign, and that meeting translates into breakthroughs and quantum leaps. It's about culture and societal progress, and um, and just it's an exciting transit. It's a forward moving, forward leaning kind of transit. Um, so we had that transit in April. Then in July, we had Mars and Uranus come together, which isn't always as positive, but definitely produces a lot of energy. Mercury, Venus, and the full moon have all squared Uranus at this point. And I did a video on the full moon around the full moon about the Democratic National Conventions because the Democratic National Convention started on the full moon in Aquarius, which was squaring Uranus and had some other transits to it. So I will link that at the end if you're interested in diving more deeply into that. But that Jupiter Uranus conjunction, I think, really is seeding a new beginning. And that's a lot of when I'm looking at these transits, that's a lot of what I'm seeing. There's a lot of endings and a lot of beginnings right now. So we really are in sort of a liminal space energetically. There will be some kind of change and transformation. So so that's the first transit that I really think that we can look at as we're evaluating candidates in this election cycle. So um, this Jupiter-Uranus cycle, the new inputs in Taurus, which is our stability and our groundedness and practicalness and all the earthy, wonderful things that Taurasian energy brings. That Jupiter-Uranus is kind of like lighting a fire and bringing in some new energy and some leaps forward in that area. And so as you think about that and think about the candidates in this election, um, and I'll let you draw your own conclusions. I certainly have drawn mine, but looking at them, which ones feel like that more revolutionary kind of energy, that more breakthrough, that more quantum leap forward? Which one feels like it's moving in that really future-seeking direction? Another thing that any kind of Uranian energy does, and certainly a Jupiter and Uranus conjunction, there's a technological aspect at the moving into new technology and new spaces, all those kinds of things come out. So I think thinking back to April and then thinking back to the Jupiter Uranus, or the I'm sorry, the Uranus square to that full moon, at the start of the DNC. What are the revolutionary kinds of qualities that are coming up in these times? So that's the first transit that I think is really interesting and really shaping what we're doing in this election. The second transit I want to talk about is Pluto, that's been going back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius over the last couple of years. And by the end of this year, will finally go into Aquarius for the next 20 years. So Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, 2009. Again, it did a seesaw back and forth. It entered Capricorn back then. And when Pluto enters a sign, um, it gives us a flavor of what kinds of issues we're going to be dealing with, of what the next chapter is going to look like. Pluto transforms. Pluto asks us to peel back the cover and really like look at the details, look under the rug, see where the dirt is, and it puts pressure on us when structures are not as they should be. And so, Pluto entering Capricorn, we started with the banking crisis and the Great Recession. We ended with COVID. So we saw places that weren't working in our society. Capricorn is very often associated with the government. So we saw places that were broken in the government during that, the 15 years that Pluto was in Capricorn. Well, now it is transferring into Aquarius. And Aquarius is the sign of the people. Aquarius is the sign of the ideal society of groups where we can all be, show up individually as ourselves, but still be part of the collective. Um, Aquarian energy is sometimes it gets equated with Uranus. I don't do that. For me that doesn't work because Aquarius is fixed air energy. You, so, and it's traditionally ruled by Saturn. And so I see Aquarius energy as really working within the system to make it better. So, for example, the last time Pluto was in Capricorn, we had the Revolutionary War. And as the government was forming and the pieces were coming together and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were getting codified, um, we were in a Pluto and Aquarius cycle. So the Pluto and Capricorn cycle broke down the old governmental structures that weren't working, and the Pluto and Aquarius cycle seeded the new union, the new pieces that came together. And so the patterns repeat. And so we're doing that again. Um, the US was also founded with Pluto at the last degrees of Capricorn. So we've been going through what's called a Pluto return. So Pluto coming back to the place it was when the country was formed. And so there is a maturing that's going on, a leveling up as we take what we've learned, over the last 248 years and move it into the next chapter of what the country is. And so I think that Aquarian energy is really strong right now. And during the election, we will go back to that Pluto and Capricorn period. And I think it's to finish doing the work that we needed to do with reforming, the traditions and the hierarchies and the power structures and the things that we are able to break down and reconfigure at this point. So it's interesting that Pluto is going to go back into Aquarius, or I'm sorry, Pluto will be back in Capricorn during the election, but then on November 20th, it moves out of Capricorn and is on into Aquarius for the next 20 years. So whoever is the leader of our country needs to be an Aquarian leader, needs to be an architect of an ideal society, an architect of a more perfect union, somebody who can really speak to equanimity and can see the boundaries with what we're dealing with and go beyond that. Somebody who's really a leader for the people, of the people, because we are in an Aquarian age, which is of the people. So so that's another piece to think about as you put this election together. We are moving into a very Aquarian time, and what does that look like for whichever leader is elected? So the third transit I want to bring up is that we have a Jupiter-Saturn square that's occurring right now. So back in December of 2020, Jupiter and Saturn came together at 0 degrees of Aquarius. We got that Aquarian theme continue again. So they came together. That was right before Joe Biden got inaugurated, right before the inauguration, and it was around the time of the last court cases that Trump was trying to push forward to, um, to remain in office. Um, so so we had an initiation point, a seeding moment at that point. When Jupiter and Saturn come together, it's about the structures over the long term, and that's a 20-year cycle. Jupiter and Saturn come together every 20 years, and so that was the seeding moment back in 2020. Fast forward to August 19th of 2024, and we had the first square, the opening square to that Jupiter Saturn cycle, that new cycle that brought in, that was seated in this place of um, Trump trying to hang on to power and you know, claim that there was fraud with the election, which was, of course, never proved, and and not never proved. It didn't happen. There was no fraud with the election, um, and Joe Biden taking power in that moment. So we're fast forwarding um, to a crisis point, to like, how are we going to continue to go forward? We've built the beginning of this cycle. This is a 20-year cycle. We've built the beginning of it, and we're at a point where we can adaptively manage and take the pieces that have worked, shuffle things around a little bit. And that first opening square happened as Kamala Harris um, was accepting the nomination to be president. And so I think that's really interesting, and interesting timing. We will actually have three Jupiter Saturn squares over the next year. Um, so I don't think that's not a done deal. So we'll over the next year, those two planets will come together in this aspect, which will allow us to adaptively manage and create some tension that will then push us forward. But ultimately, whoever is president will be working in a world that was seated at this 0 degrees of Aquarius moment. This moment of the people, for the people, by the people, and whoever is elected into this office, um, by necessity, that's the energy they're working with. And so again, it'll be interesting to see. But you know, we all have free will. We can all um, push and design as we see fit. But um, ultimately, that's where the energetics are. And um, so the way this will play out, the old will shed, and we will move more completely into this next cycle, this next um, Jupiter-Uranus cycle, this next Aquarian cycle, this next Aquarian cycle, Pluto in Aquarius, and Saturn Jupiter in Aquarius. So that's a that's a real forward momentum, and so that's the energy right now. That's a lot of the energy right now. Now, another piece of this, the fourth transit that I think is interesting and telling in this time and kind of muddies the waters, is that Neptune is pretty much stationed in the final degrees of Pisces. So Neptune is the cosmic guru, the cosmic consciousness, the higher love. It's all of those kinds of, the the nebulousness, the boundarylessness. Neptunian energy is foggy and we can't quite see it. It erodes any kind of formality. It breaks down silos. And in Pisces, Pisces is the sign of art and music and love and grace and deep, deep feelings, deep emotions, and being able to flow. And so Neptune at the final degrees of Pisces um, is really culminating everything we've learned while Neptune has been in Pisces. And I will say, Neptune in Pisces has brought us such gems as alternate facts. And, Neptune in Pisces doesn't want to discern or discriminate. It's not really keen on facts and statistics. It really wants us to feel and to love and to bring energy together. Um, and it's just like drilling down on that point. And interestingly, there's a new book that's come out that I haven't read yet, but it really seems to speak to this like potent energy of looking at what Neptune and Pisces has brought us. And it's called Ministry of Truth: Democracy, Reality, and the Republicans' War on the Recent Past. It's by Steve Bannon, and it's all about, or my understanding is, it's all about the how the Republican Party at the moment um, seems to be, actively trying to rewrite history and try to, reshape things that happened and that we all lived through, which is kind of interesting because historically, yeah, history is told by the winners, but these are things like the COVID crisis or like the insurrection on January 6th that we lived through, and yet we're trying to spin the facts on this, and that's very Neptune and Pisces. Neptune and Pisces. Um, it can be illusions, it can be delusions, it can be there can be a lot of just a lot of swirling, and we can be swept away with the tide. We can be gullible. And at 29 degrees, we're really drilling into what we've learned. And so it's interesting to see um, how the media is not sitting back when the facts are totally ignored, or when the story it, when somebody tries to reinvent the story, that the media seems to be stepping up more regularly and more often when that is happening. And so it's an interesting energy. And whereas we have, the Uranian and the Aquarian energy coming through strongly, I think this Neptunian energy is what's making this so foggy, and what is kind of making it hard for us to kind of stick the landing. That said, Saturn is in Pisces right now, and Saturn does bring some maturity and some rationality to that space. And in fact, um, with Neptune right at the final degrees of Pisces, it is going to move into Aries, and let's see, on March 30th of 2025. So whoever this next president is going to be out of that Neptune and Pisces space and into this Neptune and Aries space. So what does Neptune and Aries space look like? Well, again, Neptune is our capacity for higher love, and Aries is about action and initiation and innovation. And so it's a little wherever Neptune is, there's a lot of spiritual growth. Like we have that potential, but with Aries, I, with Neptune and Aries, I'm a little concerned about the idea of fanaticism, or kind of that holy war that you believe so strongly and you act on those beliefs in ways that might not be um, that might be more volatile than is necessary or warranted. So there's a little concern about that. Aries energy can be impulsive, and Neptunian energy is very passionate, very very values driven, very very much about doing something for love, doing acting on a thing you love. Um, I would guess it's going to bring some existential crises for many of existential crises for many of us when that transition happens. Um, so again, that whoever is the leader of the country, whoever wins this presidential election, is going to have to sit in that space where we're no longer in this space where we can kind of play fast and loose with the facts, but in a space where we might take action on things we believe or things we feel or things we see. And we want to be really careful that that action is coming from a place of the highest good and the highest value, and not a place of fanaticism or authoritarianism or any of that kind of thing. Um, Neptune and Aries, I think has the potential to be a really pioneering philosophical kind of place, a place where we really redefine who we are. Um, it's also important to note that Saturn will follow Neptune into Aries, and I think I have dates written down here. Yeah, so in the summer of 2025, so a year from now, um, Saturn is going to come within 20 minutes of Neptune in Aries. So they will come really, 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 really close to meeting in the summer of 2025. And then with retrogrades, they won't quite meet in Aries. But they will 100% come together in 2026. And I think that again, Saturn has given us some stability with Neptune and Pisces, and in Aries, I think Saturn will bring some maturity and will maybe slow down those the Arian impulses that might come, and that might lead to some outcomes that might lead to us jumping to conclusions. So so that's an interesting piece of this, and whoever is the leader of our country is going to have to live within that energy and figure out that transition, and what that looks like. And then the fifth transit I wanted to bring up, or the fifth transit I think is interesting, is so right now Jupiter is in Gemini, and Jupiter, wherever Jupiter is in the sky in our charts, we find truth, we find justice, we find wisdom, and so in wherever Gemini is in your chart, that's what we look for, and and Trump has quite a bit of energy in Gemini. Trump is an energy as a Gemini Sun, North Node, and Uranus. So Jupiter is in that space in his chart, um, bringing in abundance and exaggeration maybe, and it can bring in some hubris. So it's a good thing. It brings in a lot of energy, but it can also make us arrogant. And so take with that what you wish. But in terms of the country, Jupiter will move into Cancer in next year. Did I write down the dates? I don't think I wrote down the date, but next summer, Jupiter will move into Cancer, and the United States is a Cancerian country. And so whoever the next leader is going to be in a place where Jupiter is in Cancer. Jupiter will meet the nation's sun, 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 and bring that abundance and bring that truth and justice and wisdom, and also potentially bring that hubris and arrogance and overdoing. So it's a double-edged sword on that one, but I think overall that whoever is the leader of our country will need to sit um, in that Jupiter and Cancer space, and will orchestrate this Jupiterian cycle where it brings whatever it brings to our country. I hope that makes sense. Um, I think it's a good thing, but whoever comes into this job is going to have to do that work. So, so those are my five transits. Those are the things that I think are really shaping this election. And just to recap, they are um, Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, bringing in those breakthroughs and that new energy. Um, Pluto in Capricorn and Pluto in Aquarius. And again, the new leader of this country will have to be a Pluto in Aquarius kind of person, making a more ideal union. Um, the Jupiter-Saturn square, based on that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and kind of adaptively managing and figuring out what this structure looks like. Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces, and then moving into Aries, and what that shapes, how that lets us step into hopefully spiritual enlightenment, but also maybe some fanaticism, maybe some doubling down on our belief system, and then finally Jupiter in Gemini, and then moving into Cancer. And what does that do? What happens when our country has Jupiter on its sun? And to be fair, we could look back. I didn't look back, but we could look back. Maybe I will in another video of what has come to our country when Jupiter has been in Cancer. So those are just my thoughts in terms of all of the swaying back and forth. That's really the direction we're going in, and we do have free will. We do need to do our part, of course, to register to vote to support the candidates we believe are the best choices for the country. All of those real world things. We need to do those things, and we also need to hold space and light, um, and believe in what we think is the right direction for this country, and hold the light, um, put the energy out in the world. It, you know, if you've heard, where energy flows, focus goes. So it does matter the space we sit in and the beliefs we hold, and we will get discouraged, and we will get, kind of like, oh, I hope this is going to go the way I think it should. Um, that will happen, but ultimately, I want to encourage you to believe in the lightness and believe in the good, and to put that out in the world as much as you can, wherever you can. It doesn't have to be big. It can just be in your little sphere of influence. If your sphere of influence is little, um, that 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 those energetics matter. So I hope this has been interesting and helpful. Hopefully, it's given you some ideas of where we're going in the country, or where we're going in the world, where we're going in our lives. There's a lot of endings and a lot of beginnings happening right now, and so I think it's an exciting time, and it's a nail biting time, and we'll see what happens through all of this. All right, thanks for being with me. Again, if you're still here, like, subscribe, comment, share. I would very much appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.